The shovel scraped against frozen concrete as Henry Stanton cleared another heavy load of snow from his elderly neighbor's walkway, his breath forming white clouds in the bitter February morning air. His shoulders ached from the third driveway he had cleared that morning, but Mrs. Dorothy Chen had lived alone since her husband passed, and Henry could never drive past her snow-covered property without stopping to help. His 9-year-old daughter Emma sat in their old pickup truck, working on homework by the dashboard light, occasionally glancing up to wave at him through the frosted window. Henry pushed the shovel forward again, his work boots crunching through the fresh powder that had fallen overnight. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of snowplows on the main road. He had dropped Emma off at school late yesterday because his shift at the warehouse had run over. And today, he was determined to get her there on time, even if it meant waking up an hour early to help Mrs. Chen first. What Henry did not know was that someone was watching him from the upstairs window of Mrs. Chen's house. Bethany Morrison stood behind the curtain, her designer coat still buttoned from her early morning arrival, her dark eyes fixed on the man working tirelessly below. She had flown in from New York the night before, after her mother mentioned feeling unwell, arriving too late to call anyone for snow removal services. She had planned to tackle it herself this morning, but apparently someone had beaten her to it. Bethany studied the man's movements. He worked with practiced efficiency, his broad shoulders moving rhythmically as he cleared path after path. He was not rushing, but he was not dawdling either. There was something purposeful about the way he worked, something that spoke of discipline and genuine care. When he finished the main walkway, he moved to the side entrance without being asked, then cleared the area around the mailbox at the street. "Who is that?" Bethany asked, turning to her mother who had just shuffled into the living room in her bathrobe. Dorothy peered out the window and smiled. "Oh, that's Henry Stanton. He lives 3 houses down, wonderful man. He does this every time it snows heavily, won't take a penny for it either, though goodness knows I have tried. He just does this for free." Bethany's business mind struggled with the concept. In her world, everyone wanted something. "Some people are just good, dear," Dorothy said, patting her daughter's arm. "He's raising his little girl alone. His wife passed away from cancer about 3 years ago. Works 2 jobs to keep everything together, but he still finds time to help an old woman like me." Bethany felt something catch in her chest. She watched as Henry walked back to his truck, said something to the little girl inside, and then returned with a bag of salt to spread on the walkway. He was thorough, she noted, not just doing the minimum but making sure the job was done right. "I am going to go thank him," Bethany said suddenly. Dorothy raised an eyebrow. "You are?" "My workaholic daughter, who barely has time to visit her own mother, wants to go outside in the cold to thank the neighbor." Bethany was already moving toward the door. "It is the polite thing to do." She stepped outside, the cold air hitting her face like a slap. Her expensive leather boots were completely inappropriate for the snowy conditions, but she carefully made her way down the cleared path toward the driveway where Henry was finishing up. "Excuse me," she called out. Henry turned, surprised. His face was weathered but kind, with laugh lines around his eyes despite the hardship Bethany now knew he had endured. He was probably in his early 30s, she guessed, maybe 32 or 33. His brown hair peeked out from under a knit cap, and his green eyes held a warm intelligence. "Yes, madam." He pulled off one glove to wipe his forehead despite the cold. "I wanted to thank you," Bethany said, suddenly feeling awkward. "For clearing the snow. I am Dorothy's daughter, Bethany. I just flew in last night and I was going to handle this, but you beat me to it." Henry's expression brightened with recognition. "Oh, Mrs. Chen talks about you all the time, the successful one in New York. It is nice to finally meet you." He extended his hand, then seemed to think better of it, looking at his work glove. "Sorry, I am pretty gross right now." "I do not mind," Bethany said, shaking his hand anyway. His grip was firm and warm even through the glove. "Dad," a small voice called from the truck. "We are going to be late." Henry glanced back at his vehicle. "That is Emma. We have got to get to school." He looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, I would chat more, but timing is tight this morning." "Of course," Bethany said. "But please let me pay you for this. You have done so much work." Henry shook his head, already walking backward toward his truck. "No need, madam. Your mom is good people. She brought Emma soup when she was sick last month. We look out for each other around here. That is just how it works." He smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "It was nice meeting you, Miss Morrison." Bethany stood in the driveway, watching the old pickup truck drive away, its taillight covered with duct tape. She realized she was still smiling. Back inside, Dorothy was making tea. "Well, did you thank him?" "I did," Bethany said slowly. "Mom, how often does he do things like this?" Dorothy thought about it. "Oh, all the time. He helped Margaret down the street fix her fence last summer. He brought Mr. Patterson's groceries up his stairs when he hurt his back. Last winter, when the Hendersons' furnace broke, Henry came over with space heaters from his own house until the repairman could make it. That is just who he is." Bethany sat down at the kitchen table, accepting the tea her mother offered. She had built her fortune in tech, developing software that streamlined logistics for major corporations. She had started with nothing but student loans and determination, working 18-hour days until her company took off. Now, at 30 years old, she was worth billions, but she could not remember the last time she had done something for someone without expecting anything in return. "What does he do for work?" Bethany asked, trying to sound casual. Dorothy smiled knowingly. "He is a warehouse manager at a distribution center. Also does handyman work on weekends. Like I said, 2 jobs. Emma is in 4th grade at the elementary school, sweetest little girl, looks just like her mother from what I understand." Bethany spent the day with her mother, but her mind kept wandering back to the man in the driveway. That evening, after making sure Dorothy was settled, Bethany found herself researching Henry Stanton online. There was not much to find. No social media presence. Just a few mentions in local community forums where people recommended him for handyman work. 3 days passed. Bethany had planned to return to New York after one night, but her mother's health concerns prompted her to stay longer. The doctor's appointment revealed nothing serious, just age and winter taking their toll, but Bethany felt compelled to remain a few more days. On the 4th morning, she saw Henry's truck pull into his driveway 3 houses down. It was Saturday. Emma hopped out of the passenger side, bundled in a puffy pink coat that looked slightly too small. Henry followed, carrying grocery bags. They laughed about something as they walked to their front door. Bethany made a decision. She pulled on appropriate winter boots that she had bought in town and walked down the street. Before she could overthink it, she knocked on Henry's door. Emma answered, her brown eyes wide with curiosity. "Hello." "Hello," Bethany said, suddenly realizing she had no plan. "Is your dad home?" "Dad," Emma called over her shoulder. "There is a lady here." Henry appeared, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. He looked surprised. "Miss Morrison, is everything okay with your mom? Please call me Bethany. And yes, she's fine. I actually wanted to talk to you about something." She took a breath. "I know you do handyman work. I was wondering if you might be available for a project." Henry's expression shifted to something more professional. "Sure, I can take a look. What do you need done?" Bethany improvised. "My mother's house. The porch railing is loose, and I noticed some of the windows do not close properly. I would feel better knowing those things were fixed before I head back to New York." It was not entirely untrue. She had noticed those issues. "I can definitely help with that," Henry said. "I have got some time this afternoon if you want me to come assess it." "That would be perfect." Emma tugged on Henry's sleeve. "Dad, can we still make cookies?" Henry looked down at his daughter with such obvious affection that Bethany felt something warm unfurl in her chest. "Of course, kiddo." "I promised, did I not? We will make cookies first, then I will go help Miss Morrison's mom." Bethany corrected. "Please, just Bethany." "Okay, Bethany," Henry said, and the way he said her name made her stomach flutter in a way she had not felt in years. "I will come by around 3 if that works." "That works perfectly." Walking back to her mother's house, Bethany wondered what she was doing. She lived in New York. Her life was there, her company, her responsibilities. Henry Stanton was a single father in a small town, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. They had nothing in common. Except she could not stop thinking about the way he smiled at his daughter, or how he helped his neighbors without wanting anything in return, or how his green eyes held warmth even after years of hardship. At 3 o'clock exactly, Henry knocked on Dorothy's door. He carried a toolbox and wore a tool belt. He looked capable and confident, and Bethany had to remind herself to focus. "Let me show you the railing," she said, leading him to the front porch. Henry examined it carefully, testing the stability. "Yeah, this definitely needs reinforcement. The wood here is rotted. I will need to replace a section, but it is an easy fix. I have got the materials in my truck." "You just keep that stuff on hand," Henry shrugged. "I learned it is better to be prepared. You never know when someone might need help." They moved to the windows next. As Henry examined each one, Bethany found herself asking questions. How long had he lived in the neighborhood? Did he grow up here? What did Emma like to do? Henry answered easily, his hands moving competently as he worked. He had grown up 2 towns over, he explained, but moved here for work after his wife got sick. The hospital was closer, the neighborhood was safe, and it was affordable. Emma loved to read and was obsessed with marine biology despite never having seen the ocean. She wants to be a marine biologist. Bethany asked. Henry smiled, that transformative smile again. "This week." Last week she wanted to be a veterinarian, the week before that an astronaut. She is 9. The whole world is still possible. "That must be nice," Bethany said softly. Henry glanced at her. "You do not think the world is still possible?" "I think the world is practical," Bethany said. "I think it is budgets and schedules and responsibilities." "Sure," Henry agreed, marking something on the window frame, "but it is also possibilities. You built a billion-dollar company from nothing." "That is pretty possible." Bethany blinked. "You know about that?" Henry looked embarrassed. "Your mom talks about you, a lot. She is really proud." Something about that simple statement affected Bethany more than a dozen business awards. Her mother was proud. When was the last time she had actually sat down and talked to Dorothy about something other than health or logistics? "Can I ask you something?" Bethany said. "Why do you help people so much? The snow clearing, the handiwork for neighbors. You have enough on your plate." Henry was quiet for a moment, focusing on the window. "Finally," he said, "when my wife was sick, this neighborhood showed up. People I barely knew brought meals. They babysat Emma. They mowed my lawn when I was at the hospital. Mrs. Patterson organized a fundraiser for medical bills." He turned to look at Bethany. "I will never be able to pay that back. All I can do is pay it forward, and honestly, it makes me feel good. It makes Emma see that we are part of something bigger than just us." Bethany felt tears prick her eyes. "That is beautiful." "That is community," Henry said simply. He worked for another hour, his hands steady and sure. Bethany watched, occasionally handing him tools, asking more questions. She learned that his favorite food was his late wife's lasagna recipe, which he had tried and failed to recreate dozens of times. That Emma was struggling a bit in math but excelling in reading. That he dreamed of taking her somewhere special, maybe Disney World, but it would be a few years before he could save enough. When he finished, the porch was solid and every window functioned properly. Henry refused to let Bethany pay more than the cost of materials. "I cannot accept free labor," Bethany protested. "You are Dorothy's daughter," Henry said. "That makes you part of the neighborhood, even if you are just visiting. We take care of our own." After he left, Dorothy emerged from the kitchen where she had been conspicuously absent. "He is wonderful, is he not?" "Mom," Bethany warned. "What? I am just saying, he is a good man, they are rare." Bethany could not argue with that. That night, lying in her childhood bed, Bethany made another impulsive decision. She called her assistant in New York. Marcus, I need you to block off my schedule for another week. Another week? Marcus sounded shocked. Bethany Morrison never took time off. Is everything all right? Everything is fine. I just need to spend more time with my mother. It was not a complete lie. But as she hung up, Bethany admitted to herself that Dorothy was not the only reason she was staying. The next morning, Bethany saw Emma walking alone toward the park, pulling a sled behind her. On impulse, she bundled up and followed. Emma was at the sledding hill, watching other kids race down the slope. She held her sled but did not get in line. Bethany approached carefully. Emma, hi, I am Bethany. I live at your neighbor Mrs. Chen's house right now. Emma turned, recognition in her eyes. You are the lady my dad did work for yesterday. That is right. Are you here by yourself? My dad is at work, Emma said, but I am allowed to come to the park alone if I tell Mr. Rogers next door where I am going. I am not a baby. Of course not, Bethany said quickly. Are you going to sled? Emma looked down. I was thinking about it. Bethany recognized the hesitation. She remembered being 9, being uncertain, being on the outside looking in. Would you like some company? I have not been sledding in years. Emma's face brightened. Really? You want to sled with me? If you do not mind. They spent the next 2 hours at the park. Emma came alive on the slopes, her initial shyness evaporating. She laughed and shouted and told Bethany all about her latest book about dolphins. Bethany found herself genuinely engaged, asking questions, learning about this little girl who was so full of life despite losing her mother so young. Do you miss your mom? Bethany asked gently when they were taking a break, sitting on Emma's sled at the top of the hill. Emma nodded. Every day. But Dad says she is always with us in our hearts. He says she loved me so much that love could never disappear. Bethany's throat tightened. Your dad sounds like a very wise man. He is the best, Emma said simply. Then, with the brutal honesty of children, he gets sad sometimes, though. At night, when he thinks I am asleep, I can hear him in the living room looking at pictures. Bethany's heart broke a little. That is okay, too, she said softly. It is okay to be sad. That is what Dad tells me. They sledded until Emma's cheeks were bright red and Bethany's legs ached from climbing the hill. As they walked back, Emma slipped her small gloved hand into Bethany's. The gesture was so trusting, so natural that Bethany almost stopped walking. Can we do this again? Emma asked. I would really like that. When they reached Emma's house, Henry's truck was in the driveway. He came outside, concern crossing his face when he saw his daughter with Bethany. Emma, what is going on? Bethany took me sledding, Emma announced. It was so fun, Dad. We went down the big hill like 100 times. Henry looked at Bethany, confusion and something else in his eyes. You took her sledding? I saw her at the park, Bethany explained quickly. I hope that is okay. She said she had permission to be there, and I thought some company might be nice. For a long moment, Henry just looked at her, then his expression softened. Thank you, that was really kind. She is a wonderful kid, Bethany said. We had a great time. Emma tugged on Henry's coat. Can Bethany come for dinner, please? We are having spaghetti and you always make too much. Emma, Bethany probably has plans, Henry started. Actually, I do not, Bethany interrupted, and I love spaghetti. Henry met her eyes. Something passed between them, an understanding, a question, a possibility. Then we would love to have you. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. The kitchen was small but cozy, and Emma kept up a constant stream of chatter. Henry was relaxed in his own space, moving around the kitchen with ease. He let Emma help with the garlic bread, patiently showing her how to spread the butter evenly. So, Henry said as they ate, what is it like running a billion-dollar company? Bethany laughed. Honestly, stressful, exhausting, consuming, but rewarding. Henry prompted. She thought about it. Yes, but in a different way than this. Then what? Bethany gestured around the table. Then this. Dinner with good people, sledding on a Sunday, helping neighbors. I have accomplished a lot, but I cannot remember the last time I felt present. Henry nodded slowly. I get that. After Sarah died, I was just going through the motions for a while. Getting up, getting Emma to school, going to work, coming home, everything felt gray. He glanced at his daughter, who was animatedly describing a scene from her dolphin book. Emma pulled me back. She reminded me that life keeps going and I could either live it or just survive it. You chose to live it, Bethany said. I am trying to. Henry met her eyes. Some days are harder than others. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Bethany her room. It was a shrine to ocean life with posters of whales and dolphins covering every wall. Books were stacked everywhere, and a worn stuffed octopus sat on her pillow. This was my mom's, Emma said, holding up the octopus. Dad says she got it at the aquarium when she was little. It is very special, Bethany said. Do you have kids? Emma asked suddenly. No, Bethany said. I have been too busy with work. Oh, Emma considered this. Do you want kids? It was a question Bethany had avoided for years. I never really thought I had time for them. That is sad, Emma said with characteristic childhood bluntness. Kids are the best part of life. Dad always says I am his favorite thing. Downstairs, Henry was washing dishes. Bethany joined him, picking up a towel to dry. You do not have to do that, Henry protested. I want to. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Henry said, Thank you for spending time with Emma today. She gets lonely sometimes. It is hard being the only kid on the block her age, and I work so much. She is easy to spend time with, Bethany said honestly. She is smart and kind and funny. She gets that from her mom, Henry said softly. I think she gets it from her dad too. Henry looked at her, and the air between them changed, became charged. Bethany found herself noticing details, the way his hair curled slightly at his neck, the flecks of gold in his green eyes, the strength in his hands. Bethany, he started, then seemed to lose his nerve. I am glad you are here. In the neighborhood, I mean. Dorothy talks about you all the time, but it is nice to actually meet you. I am glad to, Bethany said. She meant it more than she could express. The weeks stretched into 2 weeks. Bethany found reasons to stay. Her mother needed her, the house needed work, the weather was bad for flying. None of them were the real reason. The real reason was Henry. She found herself timing her morning coffee to when he left for work, just to wave from the window. She volunteered to pick Emma up from school when Henry's shift ran late. She showed up at the park on Saturday knowing Emma would be there. And Henry, she noticed, started finding reasons to stop by Dorothy's house. He checked on the repairs he had made. He brought over soup when Dorothy mentioned a sore throat. He asked Bethany if she wanted to join him and Emma for ice cream, despite the freezing temperatures. Dorothy watched it all with knowing eyes but said nothing, which Bethany appreciated. One evening, 3 weeks into Bethany's stay, Henry showed up at the door looking nervous. Emma was at a sleepover, he explained, and he wondered if Bethany wanted to grab dinner, just the two of them. Like a date, Bethany asked, her heart racing. Henry rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, like a date. If you want, no pressure. I want, Bethany said immediately. They went to a small Italian restaurant in town. It was nothing fancy, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in wine bottles, but Bethany could not remember a nicer setting. I have to be honest, Henry said after they ordered. I have not done this in a long time. Sarah and I started dating in high school. She's the only woman I have ever taken on a date. You are doing fine, Bethany assured him. I mean it though, Henry continued. I do not really know how this works, the rules or whatever. There are no rules, Bethany said. We just talk. Get to know each other. So they talked. Really talked. Henry told her about growing up with 2 brothers, about playing football in high school, about meeting Sarah at a homecoming dance, about the joy of Emma's birth and the devastation of Sarah's diagnosis. About learning to be both mother and father, about the nights when he did not think he could do it but woke up and did it anyway. Bethany shared too. About building her company from nothing, about the sacrifices she made, about the relationships she never had time for. About the pressure to constantly be successful, to never show weakness, to always be on. About the loneliness that came with being at the top. Do you ever think about slowing down? Henry asked. I do not know how, Bethany admitted. My company is my identity. Without it, who am I? You are Bethany, Henry said simply. The woman who spent her afternoons sledding with a 9-year-old she barely knew, the woman who dries dishes and asks about dolphin books, that is who you are. Bethany felt tears threatening. I have spent so long being Bethany Morrison, CEO, that I forgot there was supposed to be more. Henry reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm. There is always more. It is never too late. Walking back to the car, Henry kept holding her hand. It felt natural, right? When they reached Dorothy's house, he walked her to the door. I had a really good time, he said. Me too. They stood on the porch, the cold air swirling around them. Henry lifted his free hand to her face, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I know your life is in New York, he said quietly. I know this is probably just a break for you, a temporary thing, but I need you to know that these past few weeks have been some of the best I have had in years. Henry, Bethany whispered. Let me finish, he said. I do not have much to offer. I am a single dad with 2 jobs and a truck held together with duct tape. But I like you, Bethany, really like you, and if there is any chance that you might feel the same way, I want to try to figure this out. Bethany's answer was to kiss him. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, and Henry responded immediately, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close. The kiss was tender and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Henry rested his forehead against hers. I will take that as a yes, he murmured. Bethany laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep and joyful. Yes, definitely yes, but reality, as it always does, intruded. The next morning, Marcus called with an emergency. The board wanted answers. Clients were getting nervous about her extended absence. She needed to return to New York immediately. Bethany stared at her phone, feeling the weight of her world pressing back in. She found Henry at his house, in the garage working on a cabinet. I have to go back, she said without preamble. To New York, there is a crisis at work. Henry set down his sander. When? Tomorrow, first flight out. He nodded slowly, his expression carefully neutral. Okay. Henry, last night was not just a temporary thing for me, Bethany said urgently. I meant everything. But I have responsibilities, people depending on me. I know, Henry said. I get it. Do you? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Bethany, you have built something incredible. I would never ask you to give that up. But I have responsibilities too. I have Emma. She has already lost her mother. I cannot introduce her to someone who is going to disappear. The words hit Bethany like a physical blow. I am not disappearing, aren't you? Henry's voice was gentle but firm. You live 1,000 miles away. Your life is there. Mine is here. How does this work? I do not know, Bethany admitted, but I want to figure it out. Henry stepped closer, taking her hands. I want that too, but we have to be realistic. I cannot move. Emma is settled here, her school, her friends, the support system, and I cannot ask you to give up everything you have worked for. So what are you saying? I am saying we need to think about this. Really think, not just feel. He squeezed her hands. I am falling for you, Bethany, hard, and that terrifies me because I do not see how this ends well. Bethany left the next day, but not before a tearful goodbye with Emma and a long, desperate kiss with Henry in his driveway while Emma was at school. She promised to call, to visit, to figure something out. On the plane back to New York, Bethany stared out the window and wondered what she was doing. She had finally found something real, something that mattered beyond profit margins and market shares, and she was flying away from it. The next month was torture. Bethany threw herself back into work, but nothing felt the same. Board meetings felt empty. Business victories felt hollow. She called Henry every night, and they would talk for hours, but it was not the same as being there. Emma would get on the phone and tell her about school, and Bethany's heart would ache. You are miserable, her best friend and CFO, Rachel, said one day over lunch. I have never seen you miserable. I am fine, Bethany insisted. You are in love, Rachel corrected. And you are here instead of there. Why? Because this is my company, my responsibility. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Bethany, you have 40 vice presidents who could run this place. You have systems and processes and redundancies. The company does not need you here every day. You have just convinced yourself it does. That is not true. Is it not? Rachel challenged. When was the last time you made a decision that someone 3 levels down could not have made? You are an incredible CEO, but you are also using this place as an excuse to avoid having a life. The words haunted Bethany. She started looking at her company differently. Rachel was right. She had built something that functioned beautifully, but she had also made herself indispensable out of fear. Fear that, without the company, she was nothing. But Henry had seen her as something. Emma had seen her as something. Dorothy had always seen her as something. She needed to make a choice. 6 weeks after returning to New York, Bethany called an emergency board meeting. She had prepared for this all night, running the numbers, creating a plan. She was ready. I am stepping back, she announced to the shocked room. Not stepping down, but stepping back. I will remain CEO, but I will be working remotely 3 weeks out of every month. Rachel will oversee day-to-day operations in New York. The board erupted in protests. She could not do this. The company needed her leadership. What would investors think? Bethany let them talk, then held up her hand. I have spent 10 years building this company, 10 years sacrificing everything for success, and I am proud of what we have accomplished. But I have realized something. I built a company that was supposed to give me freedom, but instead I built a prison. I made myself so essential that I have no life outside these walls. She pulled up her presentation. I am proposing a new structure. Distributed leadership, remote CEO capabilities, quarterly in-person meetings. I have consulted with management experts. Not only is this feasible, it is actually best practice. Companies with distributed leadership are more resilient, more innovative, and less vulnerable to single-point failures. She clicked to the next slide. This is not me abandoning the company. This is me making it stronger while also having a life. If you cannot support that, I will understand. But this is what is happening. The meeting went long, but eventually they agreed. Rachel would be promoted to president, handling New York operations. Bethany would remain CEO, setting vision and strategy, but doing it remotely. She would be in New York 1 week per month for key meetings. Walking out of that conference room, Bethany felt lighter than she had in years. She did not call Henry to tell him. She wanted to see his face. 3 days later, after arranging everything, Bethany drove up to Dorothy's house. Her mother had been in on the plan, delighted. Bethany had arranged to rent the house next door to Henry's, a small place that had just come on the market. It was not much, but it was a start. She knocked on Henry's door at 6 in the evening. Emma answered, did a double take, and screamed, Bethany, Dad, Bethany is here. Henry came running, thinking something was wrong. He stopped dead when he saw her on his porch with suitcases. Hi, Bethany said, suddenly nervous. Hi, Henry echoed. What are you doing here? I am moving, Bethany said. Well, kind of. I rented the house next door. I am going to work remotely. I will have to go back to New York 1 week a month, but the rest of the time I will be here. Henry just stared at her. Say something, Bethany pleaded. Instead of speaking, Henry stepped forward and kissed her. It was deep and passionate and full of promise. Emma made a grossed-out sound behind them but was clearly delighted. When they finally broke apart, Henry said, Are you sure? This is a huge change. I have never been more sure of anything, Bethany said. I was half alive before I met you, before I met Emma. Before I remembered what it felt like to be part of something real, I do not want to go back to that. What about your company? I have excellent people. The company will be fine. Better than fine. She cupped his face in her hands. But I will not be fine without you, without this. I found something here I did not even know I was missing. Emma pushed between them. Does this mean you are staying? Like really staying? Really staying, Bethany confirmed. Emma launched herself at Bethany, hugging her tight. This is the best day ever. Over Emma's head, Bethany and Henry's eyes met. His were shining with tears. "I love you," he mouthed. "I love you too," she mouthed back. The transition was not without challenges. Bethany had to learn to work remotely, to trust her team, to let go of control. There were days when she second-guessed everything, when the pull of New York and the familiar was strong. But then she would have dinner with Henry and Emma, listening to Emma talk about her day. Or Henry would show up with coffee in the morning, stealing a kiss before heading to work. Or she would walk through the neighborhood and people would wave, knowing her name. She was building a different kind of life, one with balance, one with love. 3 months into her move, Bethany surprised Emma with tickets to an aquarium in the city. The three of them drove down on a Saturday, Emma bouncing with excitement in the back seat. "I cannot believe we are really going," Emma kept saying. At the aquarium, Emma's face was pure joy. She pressed her nose against every tank, reading every placard, asking a million questions. Henry and Bethany trailed behind, hands linked. "Thank you for this," Henry said softly. "I wanted to," Bethany said. "She has been talking about the ocean for months. This is the least I could do." "It is not about the money," Henry said. "It is about the thought, about remembering what matters to her." In front of the dolphin tank, Emma turned to them with shining eyes. "This is the best day of my whole life." Bethany felt her heart swell. A few months ago, her best days had been closing deals or hitting profit targets. Now, her best day was seeing a 9-year-old girl happy. That night, after Emma was asleep, Henry and Bethany sat on his back porch with mugs of hot chocolate. The spring air was cool but no longer bitter. "I have been thinking," Henry said carefully, "about the future." "What about it?" "Emma is going to grow up, sooner than I want to admit, and I have been just focused on getting through, making sure she is okay, that we are stable." He turned to face Bethany. "But now I am starting to think about what comes after." "After what?" "After just surviving. I am thinking about really living again, building something new." He took her hand. "With you, if you want that." Bethany's breath caught. "I want that more than anything." "I know it is fast," Henry said. "We have only known each other a few months, but when you know, you know." "Right?" "Right," Bethany agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, the stars bright overhead. Bethany thought about the woman she had been 6 months ago, rushing through life, never stopping, never feeling. That woman would not recognize her now. This Bethany who woke up without an alarm, who knew her neighbors' names, who was falling in love with a single dad and his incredible daughter. 6 months after Bethany moved, Henry proposed. It was not elaborate or fancy. They were at the park, the three of them. Emma was on the swings, and Henry got down on one knee in the wood chips. "Bethany Morrison," he said, pulling out a simple ring. "You turned my world upside down. You brought joy back into this house. You love my daughter like she is your own. Will you marry me?" Bethany was crying too hard to speak, so she just nodded. Emma, who had been in on the plan, came running over screaming with delight. "We are going to be a family," Emma shouted. "A real family." "We already are," Bethany said, pulling Emma into the embrace. "We have been for a while now." They were married 3 months later in Dorothy's backyard. It was small and simple, just close friends and neighbors. Emma was the maid of honor, taking her role very seriously. Dorothy cried through the entire ceremony. "I knew it," she whispered to Bethany before the ceremony. "From the moment I saw you watching him shovel that snow, I knew." "You did not say anything," Bethany said. "Some things need to unfold naturally," Dorothy said wisely. The ceremony was brief but heartfelt. Henry's vows made everyone cry. "You taught me that it is okay to love again," he said. "That opening my heart does not mean forgetting my past. It means honoring it by living fully. You gave Emma a mother figure who loves her fiercely. You gave me a partner who challenges me and supports me and makes me laugh. You gave us both a future full of possibility." Bethany's vows were equally emotional. "I was successful before I met you," she said, "but I was not happy. I was not whole. You showed me that true wealth is not in bank accounts but in moments, in laughter over dinner, in sledding on a Saturday, in being part of a community. You and Emma gave me a home, not just a house. A life, not just a schedule. I promise to love you both with everything I have for all of my days. The reception was a neighborhood party with food brought by everyone. People shared stories about Henry helping them, about Emma's kindness, about how glad they were that Bethany had come home. Home. That is what this was now. Home. A year after the wedding, Bethany made another major announcement. She was stepping down as CEO entirely, moving to the board of directors. Rachel would take over full leadership. "Are you sure about this?" Rachel asked. "This company is your baby." It was, Bethany agreed. "But now I have other priorities. And honestly, you will do a better job than I ever did. You actually like the day-to-day operations." "What will you do?" Rachel asked. Bethany smiled. "I am going to start a foundation, focus on helping single parents in struggling situations. Access to child care, job training, housing assistance. I want to do for others what I wish I could have done for Henry." The foundation launched 6 months later. Bethany used her business acumen and connections to build something impactful. Henry helped with the community outreach, using his own experience to shape the programs. They were a good team, balancing each other's strengths. Emma thrived with Bethany in her life. Her grades improved, her confidence grew. She still wanted to be a marine biologist, and Bethany was already planning how to make that happen. College funds were set up. Summer programs at marine research facilities were arranged. "You do not have to do all this," Henry said one night, looking at the opportunities Bethany had researched for Emma. "I want to," Bethany said. "She is my daughter now, too." The adoption papers went through on Emma's 12th birthday. Bethany officially became her mother. Emma cried, Henry cried, Bethany cried. It was a mess of tissues and joy. "I will never replace your mom," Bethany told Emma. "She will always be part of you, but I love you like you are mine because you are." "I know," Emma said. "Mom would have liked you." "Dad says you are just as stubborn as she was." Henry laughed through his tears. "I said determined, not stubborn." "Same thing," Emma said with a grin. 2 years into the marriage, Bethany and Henry had a serious conversation about expanding their family. Emma was 13 now, in 8th grade, and thriving. She had surprisingly strong opinions about a sibling. "I think we should adopt," Emma said over dinner one night. "There are so many kids who need families." Bethany and Henry exchanged glances. They had discussed adoption, along with biological children, but had not made any decisions. "Why do you think that?" Henry asked. Emma shrugged. "Because you adopted me, kind of. Not legally before, but you chose me, Bethany. You did not have to, but you did. And it was the best thing that ever happened to our family. Maybe we can do that for another kid." The maturity in Emma's words astounded them both. They spent months researching, going through the adoption process, preparing. A year later, they brought home a 6-year-old boy named Marcus who had been in foster care for 3 years. Marcus was wary at first, understandably hesitant about this new family. But Emma was patient, showing him around, including him in everything. Henry was gentle and consistent, never pushing. And Bethany used every ounce of her determination to make Marcus feel safe. It took time, but slowly Marcus opened up. He laughed more. He played. He called them Mom and Dad without hesitation. Emma became a protective older sister, fierce in her love for him. Their family was complete in a way none of them had expected, but all of them needed. 5 years after Bethany first saw Henry shoveling snow, they stood in the backyard of their expanded home. They had bought the house next door and combined the properties, creating space for their growing family. Emma was 17, preparing for college. Marcus was 10, obsessed with building things, his room full of Lego creations. "Do you ever miss it?" Henry asked, pulling Bethany close. "The corporate world, the power." Bethany thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the rush. The satisfaction of closing a big deal. But then I come home to this, and I realize what I thought was satisfaction was just distraction." "You have built something bigger than a company," Henry said. The foundation has helped hundreds of families. That is a legacy. We built it, Bethany corrected. You and me, together. Emma came outside, followed by Marcus. Dad, can you help me with my college essay? Marcus keeps stealing my Legos, Marcus complained simultaneously. I am borrowing them, Emma corrected. For a demonstration for my marine biology application. Bethany and Henry laughed, pulling their kids close. This was chaos. This was messy. This was real. This was everything. That night, after the kids were in bed, Bethany and Henry sat on the porch swing they had installed. It had become their spot, the place where they talked about everything and nothing. I have been thinking about that day, Bethany said, when you were shoveling my mom's walk. The day we met. Yeah. I was watching you from the window, trying to figure out why someone would work so hard for nothing. I thought you were naive, Henry chuckled. What do you think now? I think you were the smartest person I had ever met, Bethany said. You understood something it took me 30 years to learn. That connection is everything. That community matters. That the best investment you can make is in people. You were not wrong either, Henry said. Building your company, achieving what you did, that took incredible strength and vision. You just learned to channel it differently. We learned together, Bethany said. They rocked gently, the spring air warm and full of promise. From inside the house, they could hear Emma Video chatting with friends about college plans. Marcus was supposed to be asleep, but was probably reading under his covers with a flashlight. Do you think we will always be this happy? Henry asked softly. Bethany considered the question. She thought about the challenges they had faced, the adjustments they had made, the work it took to blend their lives. She thought about the challenges still to come. Emma going to college. Marcus navigating adolescence, the normal struggles of life. No, she said honestly. There will be hard days, sad days, days when we wonder if we are doing anything right. Henry turned to look at her, concerned. Bethany smiled. But we will face them together, and that makes all the difference. She took his hand, linking their fingers. I found you because I was watching out a window, trying to understand kindness, and you changed everything. You changed everything for us too, Henry said. Emma needed a mother, I needed a partner. We were surviving, but you taught us to live. We taught each other, Bethany insisted. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from deep understanding and trust. Inside, Marcus called out for water. Emma told him to get it himself. She was busy. The normal sounds of a normal family in a normal house. Except it was not normal to Bethany. It was extraordinary. She thought about the woman she had been, racing through life, chasing success, never stopping. That woman would not believe where she ended up. Would not understand how a chance decision to thank a neighbor could lead to everything. But that was the thing about life. You could plan all you wanted, build all the structures and systems, but the real magic happened in the unplanned moments, in the human connections, in the choice to say yes to something scary and uncertain. Bethany had spent years building an empire. But her greatest achievement was not her company or her wealth. It was this family, this life, this love. Thank you, she whispered to Henry. For what? For clearing the snow that day, for being the kind of man who helps without expecting anything. For giving me a chance even though it did not make sense. Henry kissed her forehead. Thank you for watching, for staying, for taking a chance on a single dad with an old truck and too many responsibilities. Best decision I ever made, Bethany said. Inside, they heard Marcus finally convince Emma to get him water. They heard her grumbling good-naturedly, then both kids laughing about something. The sounds of siblings, of family, of home. Henry stood and offered Bethany his hand. Come on. Let us go make sure they have not destroyed the kitchen. Bethany took his hand, letting him pull her up. They walked inside together, into the warmth and light and chaos of their life. She glanced back at the window where she had first watched Henry work, where this entire journey began. And she smiled, grateful for every choice that led her here. The next morning, Bethany woke early and looked out that same window. The neighborhood was quiet in the dawn light. A new family had moved in down the street, and their driveway was covered with spring debris from a storm. Without hesitation, Bethany pulled on boots and grabbed a rake. Henry found her 20 minutes later, halfway through clearing the new neighbor's drive. "Starting the pay-it-forward chain?" he asked, amused. "Someone taught me it is the right thing to do," Bethany said with a smile. Henry grabbed another rake and joined her. Together they worked, side by side, as the neighborhood woke around them. When they finished, the new neighbor came out, surprised and grateful. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Bethany said warmly. "We take care of our own here." Walking back home, hand in hand with her husband, Bethany felt complete. She had traveled a long road from that winter morning when she first watched Henry shovel snow. From corporate CEO to devoted wife and mother. From isolated and lonely to surrounded by love. She had learned that true wealth was not measured in dollars, but in relationships. That success was not about what you built, but who you built it with. That the best investment was not in stocks or companies, but in people and communities. Emma was right all those years ago. Love was the best part of life. And Bethany had found it in the most unexpected place in a small neighborhood, with a kind man who taught her what really mattered. Their story was not perfect. There were no fairy tale endings in real life, but it was real and hard won and beautiful. It was built on choices and commitment and the daily decision to show up for each other. As they reached their house, Marcus came running out. "Mom, Dad, my Lego spaceship is finally done. Come see." Mom. The word still made Bethany's heart skip. She had been called CEO, founder, billionaire. But Mom was her favorite title. "Coming?" she called, hurrying up the walk with Henry. Inside their home, with their children chattering excitedly, planning their day, Bethany paused. She caught Henry's eye across the chaos. He winked at her, and she felt that familiar flutter in her chest. This was everything. This was enough. This was more than enough. This was love, in all its messy, complicated, wonderful glory. And she would not trade it for anything in the world. Years later, when people asked Bethany Morrison for advice, she always told them the same thing. Success is not about how much you achieve. It is about who you become in the pursuit. It is about staying open to possibilities. It is about recognizing that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. And it all started with watching a kind man shovel snow on a cold winter morning. Henry and Bethany grew old together, surrounded by their children and eventually grandchildren. Emma became a marine biologist, working to protect ocean life. Marcus became an architect, designing affordable housing for families in need. Both of them carried forward the lessons of service and community that Henry and Bethany had taught them. The foundation Bethany started grew into a nationwide organization, helping thousands of single parents build stable lives. Henry eventually retired from the warehouse to work full-time with Bethany on the foundation. They were partners in every sense, building something meaningful together. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they returned to Dorothy's house. She had passed years before, but they had kept the property as a reminder of where it all began. They stood in the driveway where they first met. "Do you remember that day?" Bethany asked, "when you were clearing the snow?" "How could I forget?" Henry said. "I looked up and saw this beautiful woman coming down the walk in completely inappropriate boots. I thought you were going to fall flat on your face." Bethany laughed. "I almost did, but I wanted to thank you." "And I am forever grateful you did," Henry said, pulling her close. "You changed my life, Bethany Morrison Stanton." "We changed each other's lives," Bethany corrected. She leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and loved and home. The snow had long since melted, but the foundation they built that winter day remained solid. A foundation of love, trust, and commitment, of choosing each other every single day, of building a life that mattered. It was not the story Bethany had planned. It was better. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones we do not see coming. The ones that start with a simple act of kindness and grow into something beautiful. The ones that teach us that love is not about grand gestures, but about showing up, day after day, for the people who matter. And Henry Stanton, the poor dad who cleared snow from an elderly woman's walk, had taught Bethany Morrison, the billionaire who watched him work, the most important lesson of all. That love, real love, is the greatest wealth anyone can possess. And it is available to everyone who is brave enough to open their heart and take a chance. Their story was proof that sometimes, in the most ordinary moments, the most extraordinary things can begin. All it takes is kindness, courage, and the willingness to see the possibilities in front of you. And they lived happily ever after, not because life was perfect, but because they faced it together, with love as their foundation and family as their purpose. The end.